Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Well, another episode of Iron Radio. This is Phil Stevens. I am a strength coach, powerlifter, Highland Games athlete, and youth football coach.
This is Coach Jarrell, Strength Guild in KC. I'm just coaching a little bit of everything these days. You know, a lot of little kids scrambling around the gym, though, these days.
That seems to be the trend. All you guys are doing the youth stuff.
I'm trying to get like the Chinese, man, and just have like start at 5, you know, like eliminate all the adults and then just 5-year-olds and just, you know, have PVC pipes to like, you know, whack them into position. Perfect.
Yeah, but you need the laws they have. You can't strap them to poles and just leave them there.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll talk about cultural differences later on the show too. Yeah, and this is Lonnie Lowry. I'm doing this on my phone, everybody. So the internet's coming and going. I'm going to cross my fingers here. But I was a professor for 20 years. I do industry and academic consulting and stuff like that now. And former competitive bodybuilder.
There you go.
Okay. I have 2 pieces of news. I'm going to do these partly from memory because I can't do everything through my phone. One of them, it came out through Lab Roots, talked about graded exercise tests and how they can be used to predict not just cardiovascular disease, but all-cause disease. And I just thought it was interesting. We could talk a little bit about like the importance of maintaining like an aerobic base, and because I did not do that for many years, right? To your point, Phil, on the show over the years, I wanted to be very large, and I'm not a very large person, so I did very little cardio. That was all wasted energy expenditure. I needed those calories going toward muscle building, you know, and I was always too concerned. But now I do quite a bit of it. But the idea is that they can use, you know, your resting heart rate, of course, your aerobic ability, like your VO2 max, and they can also use the chronotropic index, which is sort of like your heart rate reserve. So think about like your max heart rate minus your resting heart rate. And then they compare that to your age predicted max heart rate and resting heart rate. So the idea would be that you can use these markers to predict diseases. And this just came out, but then I pulled a paper from 2016 as well. Now, I think a lot of people know your max heart rate, the old 220 minus your age, that's an estimate, right? That's a calculated estimate. It's plus or minus 11 beats per minute. For me, my max heart rate age predictor would be like 165. And it is interesting because when I go to the gym, that's about what I push to when I do interval work.
Yeah.
But then there's these other things too, like compared to what the age prediction would be. And to me, sometimes there's a chicken or egg issue with this, though, because is your ability to consume oxygen, is that causal in your reduced disease risk? Or is that just an outgrowth of the fact that like people with really low VO2 max are already sick in some way, or very, very sedentary, or whatever it might be? You know what I mean? These things are associations, but it does create sometimes, in my mind, this chicken or egg conundrum where is fitness status the cause or the result of these diseases, that, you know, the progression toward these diseases. And maybe it doesn't matter. If it's associated, it's associated, I guess. But yeah, that was just something that came up, and I thought, you know, it is interesting that exercise testing, they're being wrapped up right with, you know, blood pressure and cholesterol and a lot of the other things that they look at, especially as people age. And I've heard that for years, that your VO2 max is hugely connected to, you know, health, and not just your functional ability in an aerobic sense, but overall, like, lack of disease and wellness and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I guess the only question I have out of this, other than the news, is how do you guys look at this stuff? I mean, do you focus on aerobic base on purpose? I know powerlifters, I think they do this more sometimes than bodybuilders, as far as I see you guys pushing and dragging sleds and all that kind of stuff. And because if you don't have enough aerobic base, you can't do enough work with the weights in the gym, presumably, right?
Yeah, I'd say we probably like bodybuilders generally do cardio for the one not to be in shape, to get lean,
Yeah.
Whereas powerlifters definitely, I mean, everything is geared more towards performance with powerlifting.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't just complete a session, I've had people that can't complete a session. So what do we need to do? We just need to get their work capacity up. So, so part of that's just general conditioning. And then you get into multi-sport athletes, and like I'm mainly working with now. And yeah, of course. Like, okay, we have to play football for an hour. So we need to run some. My linemen maybe less than my skilled position players and things like that. But, no, definitely. And I think it still goes to the wayside, and mainly near competition. Near competition, it's like, I don't give a shit about that. Like, the most, with powerlifters at least, the most conditioning work happens in the off season, in the early off seasons. Okay, let's get in shape again. The meet's over. Let's get not so fat and out of shape. You come close to the competition, and it's like, it doesn't fucking matter. You got to be able to do 9 lifts, And
that's funny, because that's the opposite of bodybuilding,
it's
right?
Totally opposite, yes.
In body, you're only doing the cardio, and it's not really cardio a lot of times. A lot of times these guys are still just doing walk uphill, 4% grade on a treadmill before breakfast kind of thing for an hour. It's not really cardio. I mean, yeah, it can be interval stuff. There's people, they're always to skin a cat here. But yeah, in the off season, it's almost taboo. I mean, yeah, you might be doing more sets and more reps sometimes with bodybuilding. Depends on your approach, I guess. But yeah, direct aerobic conditioning, when you're trying to gain weight, that's all wasted energy expenditure, man. You don't want to do that. You're trying to overeat, getting a calorie surplus,
Well, yeah.
So it can fall away.
The way I try to coach people, too, I would much rather, and I think this happened more, it happens less now. Like now in powerlifting, it's always big to people cut down and make weight. But if you look at days past, a lot of times it was eaten up for meets. So you ate up, filled out your weight class. So like off-season powerlifters looked more like bodybuilders. In-season powerlifters looked more like powerlifters. They took a break from all the eating in the off-season, leaned out, and then, ate up to meets. And because I've just seen better results with that, of course. The only time that I like cutting at all, like I don't push for a lifter to cut at all unless they're at least a national record. Like state record, no, just go lift. But if you're pushing that national record or world record level, okay, now it's worth cutting. I don't care if you win the Shawnee County firefighters fucking gold medal. It's not worth your career. Like even in the projection of our career, like if you want to be a world record holder, why the hell are we cutting clear back here 5 years before that you're just wasting your career. You're wasting months of your career doing a cut that doesn't need to happen when we eventually need to be 275 and breaking a world record. So you're slowing down your career.
Your trajectory toward massive.
Towards your end goal.
Ultimate weight class.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you see that now more than ever, I think, is lots of cutting and staying in lower weight classes, where if you looked over the broadcast of someone's career in like Ed's age, Cohen's age, like you usually saw, let's say they started at 181. Over their career, you would, if you follow their records, it's okay. He was 181. A year and a half later, he was 198. A couple years later, 220. A couple years later, 242. There was this increase over time in even the weight classes they were in. And usually, hopefully, as the body weight increased, the weights increased much more than that. And that's what happened in my career. Like I jumped from 242 to 275, and that's like, 33 pounds, but the weight on the bar went up hundreds. That's worthwhile.
Oh, totally.
So.
And you know what? Interesting to this point, too, we talked about like a graded exercise test, aerobic capacity, VO2 max. That's per kg, right? So the more kgs of body weight you have, the more your VO2 max sucks.
Yes.
Right? Like I used to be made fun of when I was in grad school because, I was 228. That was about as high as I could ever maintain it. I can never quite stay 230. But the point being was at 5'9", that's a lot. And my VO2 max was 33. Now, anybody out there who's an exercise science student is probably laughing like, oh my God, like you were so out of shape. But was I? Because you divide per kg. And I had, over 100 kilos on my little frame.
Yeah.
And so you're dividing by that oxygen intake by a huge number of kilos, and it just makes it look like it sucks.
Yeah.
Now don't get me wrong. I probably didn't have amazing VO2 max. You know what it's like when you overeat. Like if you're 20, 30, 40 pounds heavier than Mother Nature wants you to, you go up a flight of stairs, you're grabbing your knees, you're panting, it's not healthy at all. No. And so that's what made me think about this VO2 thing, because as I've gotten older, now I'm in the gym doing interval training just to keep up my aerobic capacity, right? Not because I want to do real long sessions in the gym, but for disease prevention and for longevity and stuff like that.
No, that's the same thing with me. That's why I'm losing weight.
I have a question for you, Lonnie, on how you measure your heart rate in training. What's your method of, like, essentially managing that without the heart rate monitor in a training session?
I would just put 2 fingers against my carotid band, I would just check my pulse. I typically would just do it for 10 seconds and multiply by 6. I know that creates a little more slop than if you did it for 15 seconds and multiply by 4. But yeah, I would shoot when I was younger. Age predicted what my max is, 220 minus my age, and I would try to get within a certain range using my heart rate reserve or even just a percentage of my max heart rate. So that usually came out to me because I would do like light walking uphill, like we were talking about, because I didn't want to do hard interval training and then my lifting would suck later in the day. So I would just try to get in that 120 to 130 beats per minute range. Yeah, that's the only way we did the cardio, because I didn't want to get too intense. I was trying not to cross any of those ventilatory thresholds and all that kind of stuff. I didn't want it to be intense. Now, don't get me wrong. There was times when I was in the gym, I would also do some interval work, but I was just talking about a fat-specific calorie drain and keeping my heart rate fairly low, in the mornings and stuff. Because essentially it's a 2 a day if you consider that an exercise session, but I really didn't even consider it an exercise session.
Yeah.
I've added in stuff with, I do mostly I'll do more like mixed modality type stuff with, I try to include basically the kettlebells, sandbags, which I'm starting to love a lot more. Some other strongman work, like either sled drags, if it's like the weightlifters. I've added in like the overhead carries, with the yoke. I've kind of played around with a lot, and mix that with like a bike or a rower for 40 minutes, like having a 30 to 40 minute session that's separate from the strength session that I do. And I haven't done it with any powerlifters yet, but I would do probably the same. I'd actually maybe do like 3 primary lifting days and then 2 days that still include, this, like that kind of session. And then when we get closer to competition, go more towards like a 4 days of lifting and 1 day of that. For our lifters, I just call them like feeder sessions in terms of the aerobic and GPP stuff, but mostly because getting people in here to just sit on the bike or sit on the rower for an hour is not going to happen. So I think the strongman stuff and kettlebell stuff, it's like flossing, you like brushing your teeth gets most of it, but flossing kind of gets in the crevices.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned GPP. I mean, in bodybuilding, you don't have to be physically prepared for freaking anything.
No.
It's body composition.
Yep.
It's all about fat tissue and muscle tissue, and in that way, I think it's way less healthy because there's nothing functional about it.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. There are guys who do that, but the guys who don't massively overeat, who don't blow up 30 pounds, 40 pounds above what Mother Nature intended, the guys who do lots of cross-training stuff, they look like wrestlers. They don't look like bodybuilders.
Yeah.
And I guess it depends on how much gas you're on, But, yeah, it's an interesting thing that you can throw away this huge component, at least in the bodybuilding world. And I know people have different opinions on that. That's fine. But how fitness status is this huge health marker now, literally like your VO2 max, and being able to stay functional and keep up your ability to use oxygen. It's just kind of fascinating stuff, I think. is there something magical? Because you can make a mechanistic argument there. You got more mitochondria, more capillaries, superior heart function. That keeps you healthy. Or the flip side is all of those things fall off and you detrain, right? Reversibility principle, because there's some disease process at work. Like I said, it's almost like this chicken or egg, because people who have any, certain advanced disease processes, their aerobic ability is going to suck because they're not training. They're ill. They don't feel well, whatever it is. But whether it's chicken or egg, it's just interesting that, this is your ability to process oxygen in this chronotropic index, looking at your resting heart rate. And resting heart rate's always been a big marker of fitness status, right? Yeah. I mean, people real low resting heart rates are more fit. You hear about these runners with resting heart rates in the 50s.
Yeah.
I thought it was just a interesting paper we could toss around.
No, I mean, it makes sense. And in powerlifting, I mean, we've all seen it. Those people that they're literally so out of shape by the time the deadlift gets there that they don't have anything left.
Yeah.
That you're just way out of shape. And because it is a long day. I don't care what anybody says. It's 5 to 7 hours and a lot of times you're amped up too long and you see the deadlift come around and people shit the bed. Whereas in training, they were hitting 150 pounds more than that. That's because they didn't have to wait from first lift to last lift that long. And so, you do need to have a certain level of conditioning for sure. But, it's a minimal base. Yeah.
It might be age and goal related. I mean, there are some people who, when I was young, like I said, I would laugh about having a 33 VO2 max, 33 mils per kg. Are you kidding? And, it does make you wonder, did that take a toll? But, trying to push an athletic envelope in any regard, but even to compete on a regional stage, I knew what that meant weight-wise if I wanted to place in the top 2 or 3. And I don't know. Me personally, I just couldn't have spent all that time doing cardio and everything. In fact, when I stopped doing the martial arts stuff, in my early 20s, that same year, I think I put on 20 pounds.
Yeah.
Right? Because I got in a calorie surplus for a change.
But that goes back to the thing we talk about all the time. And it's that athletic pursuits very rarely have anything to do with health. Long as anytime you're if you try to push anything out of the average, there's gonna be some side effects that are unpleasant. It's just the fact.
Yeah.
So, and you knew it. You're not stupid.
Yeah.
You knew that when your O2 was at 33, that but you were willing to give that up to place at a regional level, and that's okay.
Right. So, yeah. Well, you're right, and you're right when you talk about congratulations, you got a gold medal in the Mr. whatever lower level kind of thing. Vast majority of enthusiasts, health can be a big part of it, but at some point you specialize to the point that I just think it doesn't. I agree. It just it's no longer the primary driver, and you're willing to give up certain things, even if it's less healthy.
Yes.
To be at a certain level. And I know I wasn't at any kind of national or pro level, but that's what it was going to take for me to do that. And I did that for, 20 years, you know?
Exactly. Well, it reminds me of, I lifted in the first powerlifting competition that they brought in. They had 2 separate categories. They had the regular powerlifting, and they had a CrossFit competition. And so the CrossFitters just competed against CrossFitters in powerlifting. And, of course, I mopped the floor against any of those guys. But after it, they were like, well, yeah, but I could have ran a mile after it. Well, I don't give a fuck. We're competing in powerlifting.
Congratulations.
I killed you. That has nothing to do with today. Today was about powerlifting. And it's it doesn't matter that you can run a mile faster than me. I picked up 400 pounds more than you in a total.
Because it's just like what we said with flexibility. And, you want that. Sometimes that goes out the window. Aerobic capacity, flexibility. When you specialize, you pick one of these components of physical fitness and you triple down on it.
Yes.
And at the expense of the others,
Yeah. And I would expect if I joined a CrossFit competition, you guys would have mopped the floor with me. And I wouldn't be like, well, I could have picked up more weight. It doesn't fucking matter. We're not playing.
But that's not
the sport we're doing today. It has no relation to it. So, it's just.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, I had one more thing. I was going to ask you guys your thoughts on this. One of these personal training certification sites. And we both know there are hundreds and hundreds of certifications out there. And not all of them are as valuable as the others. But they had a list of how you know that your trainer is qualified. And I suppose you could extend this to how you know your coach is qualified. So let me pull this up, and I'm just going to read down the list, and you guys make a mental note of any ones you agree with or disagree with. Okay, ways to tell your personal trainer is qualified. I'm just going to fire through. Number 1, they have a degree in exercise science-related field. Number 2, they are certified. Number 3, they have liability insurance. Number 4, they have CPR and first aid certs. Number 5, they have experience working with people with your goals. Number 6, they design customized workout programs. Number 7, they give you nutritional advice. That's one that grates me a little, but and number 8, they hold you accountable. So, what do you think, Phil? Overall, agree, disagree? What jumps out at you?
Well, off the top of my head, 5 and 6 would move up to 1 and 2. Like, I want to know that you work with people in the sport I'm looking to do.
That's what I thought you would say.
That's highest on the list for me. Like,
rubber hits the road, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's that's like any field. Want. The college degree, it's great. Okay, I like that. But if you've done nothing, I don't care. You know, there's plenty of doctors that are doctors in their fields that aren't practitioners, and they can't do it. They can teach the ins and outs of it, but they don't know how to do it. So, yeah, those would be the first 2 that jump out to me. And that's not saying the others don't help. And like insurance, I've never even thought of thinking about that. But I'm a different person. Like, if I go in and fucking hurt myself in your gym, I'm not suing you. I know I'm coming in here and taking a risk. You know, anytime I step under the bar, I'm smart enough to know that something may snap. Those would be the first 2 that jumped out to me, is like who you've worked with and things like that.
I wish people would come ask me if I had insurance, and that was the sales point. That'd be great, because that's easy.
Yeah, just pay a bill. Yeah, I mean, I haven't. But no one has asked me over the last 25 years if I have insurance. I do, but it's never been asked. So
I mean, what's funny about the exercise science degree is I do have one, and most of the people in this area particularly don't. But that's like, that doesn't come up. Like, that will never ever be asked about. Now maybe it's good, but actually, like, a lot of my mentors don't have any degree in exercise science. You know, it's like art degrees, religious studies, and stuff like that in terms of training. And sometimes the exercise science nerds are like the worst to learn from, because they spend so much time trying to get it perfect. But I mean, just training people in general is maybe 20% exercise science. Maybe that might be a high number. And mostly it's psychology, marketing, like all the things that you know, and like the things, because people can make progress with like not the best programming. So, or not the best program or whatever. So some of those, like that, the top few of those are odd. The nutrition one is weird, because like, yeah, you should, like, if you have that knowledge base, sure, and like you've worked with people on that, but again, it's not the nutrition part of it is not even the connection. Most of it could be boiled down to like 3 things. Do you connect with your coach? Do they know what they're talking about? You know, I don't even say necessarily like have they done it before or whatever, because like I've done like powerlifting and stuff before. I would like not, or coached powerlifting and stuff before, and I'd say I coach a lot of different things, but you know, and to get the experience, I didn't start with the experience, I should say that. But once you get in the game, then you know you have more experience than the next person in terms of like approaching the meet and all that stuff, and you kind of can see some general issues or whatever.
Well, you know, education matters to me, and there's different ways to get educated, right? Let's not confuse education with schooling. This is something Elon Musk talks about sometimes. And of course it's good. I want people to understand organ systems, especially musculoskeletal stuff, neural stuff. I was just rambling about mitochondrial biogenesis and aerobic VO2 max and stuff. These are important things to know. But Phil used to say, if I can't explain why to my people, then I'm not worth my salt. And I don't care how you know why, because let's face it, ultimately all learning is self-learning. I think that's an Isaac Asimov quote. Whether you have that facilitated in a school or not. This particular article actually said, well, a degree guarantees that they're up on the scientific literature. No, it doesn't. Even if you've got continuing education credits, we all know that CEUs, that's a huge industry of its own.
Yeah,
and a lot of times they won't even give you credit. Kind of a money grab, yeah.
Yeah,
and so,
of it is.
I mean, a lot of this, the CEUs that I go to conferences that I know damn well they won't count toward my nutrition license at all. Like, I just went to a NASA conference. I drove to frickin' Houston and learned from world-class PhDs in the field. I won't get any credit for it.
Yeah.
Because to your point, it's its own industry. It's kind of its thing. And that's not a guarantee that you're up on the most recent literature, and especially the degree itself. The certification comes with the CEUs. But, yeah, unless someone has just motivated themselves to go, like you've done, Phil, like apprentice yourself to all these different people or go to conferences all over the place. And, Mike's doing freaking fresh cadaver dissections just because he's a nerd. Like, these are all, again, lots of ways to learn. But a degree or a certification in itself. But I know, Phil, you've talked to my classes over the years. Like, years ago, he said, are you currently NSCA certified in this and this? And you're like, you know what, kid, I've had like all the certs at some point, and I keep some of them and some I don't, or, because as you get older, and I get it, yes, maintaining some type of standard of practice, that's important. But at some point, you start to realize that these are industries and they can be a cash grab.
Yes, well, and that's exactly the point. Those are the certifications and the degrees mean more when you're starting out, because that's all you have to hang your hat on.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
At a certain point, if you've helped 100 people get to a high level, that speaks much higher than your degree, and nobody gives a shit about that.
Yeah, they don't ask about it. They don't say what's your degree in. You know, when I used to talk to a bunch of pro bodybuilders backstage and stuff, I would be like the science editor for a magazine or something. We'd be backstage at these big pro events. Nobody gave a damn. All they cared about is look at huge guy.
Yeah.
Like, not look at the guy with the PhD. In a way, it makes me sad that we don't value education more. I think we probably should. But ultimately, there's a difference between education, which, includes a lot of theory. And you can have a master's or even a doctorate in something and never actually go employ it, apply it. It could be theory and you could know about biochemical pathways.
Yes, you've memorized a lot of things. And on the CEU thing, like you touched upon, I have taught CEUs for pretty much every organization. It's like I said, it's a cash grab. Like, it is basically a participation award. All you have to do is pay and go to this thing. Did you retain anything? They don't give a shit. You don't. There is no test or anything to see if you actually listened. Like, you just need your butt in a seat. Or you came in, walked in the door, and then you snuck out the back and went drank coffee with people. It's literally that there's no test over these CE
even
courses.
If there was a quiz for for a cert, it would be like you said. How do you know anybody retains that? Or if it was worthwhile? And let me get this off my chest about the nutrition thing. We had whole episodes on this in the past. Nutrition is a licensed profession. License legal is what I used to tell students. It's not just another certification. So if anybody can just start, certifying each other in nutrition, that's like you or I certifying each other in dentistry. We don't have a license. Bad things are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen. So now, don't get me wrong. I think it's wrong. I think it's an injustice that we have license in nutrition. Like in my state, you need a license to tell someone how I'm going to eat a banana, but not to put them on a treadmill and give some obese, crippled guy with an arrhythmia a heart attack and kill him. You have to have a license to cut hair in my state. but not to do exercise science stuff.
Yes.
So I think, there is a protection of the public thing. There's some injustices there, and a lot of it has to do with the history of how these different organizations approached their state bodies and lobbied and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think the mature approach with all this is these are all cards to stack in your favor. And to your point, Phil, that's a really good point, especially early on, when you don't have this portfolio of, well, look at that dude, look at her, look at him. That's partly me. And people are like, oh, hey, you get this portfolio of people that you've worked with or you've worked under, but that takes time. So out of the gate, I am a big proponent of a degree in exercise science.
It gets you in the door.
It does. It provides a structured introduction, right? Classes get scaffolded in a curriculum. So you start with basic stuff and then you build in different directions and you specialize a little bit because of prerequisites. One class leads to another. And when I've spoken to a lot of bodybuilders in my career, guys who didn't have a degree, sometimes they can talk a really good game with some of this biochemistry stuff or pharmacology, but then you talk to them for any length of time and there's these huge holes. So you're like, oh, that's not how that works. Like, you were really A+, man. That's not how that works. And I don't want to sound smug, but, it's because they didn't get that scaffolded, structured curriculum. I do think it helps early on. But again, it doesn't mean that you could go out and apply it. When I used to teach strength conditioning, one of the reasons I had you come talk to my classes, or we would literally, I'd like, listen, the university, bring in a strength coach. Because looking at those cues and all that kind of stuff when it comes to what some of the kids wanted with lifting, I'm like, you know what? My background with the weights is bodybuilding. I don't think I want to teach any of you guys that stuff. Like, it's not the same thing as performance.
And just like Darrell talked about, most of the people I know that are actual strength coaches at a high level, a lot of them don't have a education background in it. And oddly enough, they only get the certification because they have to. It's required. So they will get it. Okay, I have to get it because it's required, but it's not. They didn't shoot out to get that. They didn't get that in an attempt to get better. They got it as a default of like, okay, if I'm going to be an NCAA strength coach, I have to go through the NCAA or the NSCA.
It's almost like extortion. You have to do this to be legitimate. You have to be one of us. You have to pay into our system. I was once told by an athletic trainer, Lonnie, you can't teach a nutrition class in our curriculum because we consider nutrition an advanced topic and you're not an athletic trainer. And I'm like, what? I have graduate degrees and a license to practice nutrition, and you don't. But if I'm not an athletic trainer, I don't qualify to teach that class. That shows how incredibly insular and inbred some of these people can think.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not one of us, you're not legitimate.
Yeah.
And after a while, you get sick of chasing that.
Yep. But, you see it in every field. I think, we've seen a shift. We've seen a shift. There was a day 25 years ago, whatever, that people got a bachelor's degree, they went and landed a good job. But now you see it in every field. Like, just because you have a MFA or a master's degree in business, an MBA, if you can't go and actually do business well, you're not going to get a fucking job. You're
That's why we
fired real quick.
We've lost the apprenticeship model, right?
Yeah.
If we embrace that apprenticeship mentor model more, there'd be less of what you just said.
Yes,
right,
and
right?
There
wouldn't be people getting pumped out with degrees.
I go back and forth on
they can't do anything.
The strength coach thing, like you talked about. I would love it. There's a big part of me that would love if there was an organization that you actually had to go through to legally practice strength and conditioning or coaching or whatever. Yeah. And like that sounds wonderful to me. And then I'm like, okay, well, which organization? Because they all have flaws. They're all jaded in a certain way. And it's like, I don't totally agree with any of them. So really, which one is going to head this up?
When you're an advanced practitioner and you're heavily experienced with decades, it's hard to even take one of these tests because you look at one of these certification questions and you're like, there's no right answer here. You're critiquing them.
I know. Like, you'll look at the test and like, I'm going to answer that wrong and I'm going to fail it, but I'm right.
Right.
But I'm not giving them the answer they want to hear.
No. In fact, my wife once said, Lonnie, give them the preferred wrong answer.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's like, God, that's so annoying. But like you said, like we have to have a license to drive a car. The human body is a lot more
complex
than that. And we don't have people don't have to have a license to teach people how to use that. That's a tough one, but it's like, again, which organization? And so that's where I struggle with that, because I dropped everything after a certain amount of time. It's like, I remember getting pissed off with one organization. They wouldn't let me teach CEUs anymore because I wasn't certified. And I was like, well, they eat a dick, because I'm not, or they wanted me to teach, but then wanted me to pay. Like, you're the one that contacted me to come talk, but you want me to pay to be a part of your organization? No. Give me one. Give me your $100 cert and just hand me the piece of paper and I'll go teach. But I'm not paying you to come talk for you.
Hey everybody, Iron Radio is back, and in an expanded way. What can you expect? Well, first, you can get it simulcast every week on the nutritionradio.org network, as well as on the original podcast. It'll appear regularly on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite podcasting sites. We have a new Iron Radio / Nutrition Radio Facebook page as well. Please check us out. We're even backed up on YouTube. Second, please tell your friends who are longtime loyal listeners that they may see emails that share just the episode link and the show notes. This is a new thing, and we hope it will build community. Third, if you were a supporting member in the past, we may prompt you to resume through PayPal, but we will confirm each and every donor before reinstating that membership category. We'll never just restart your $4 auto payments without agreement from you. And of course, we will accept new members moving forward as well. Starting back slowly and honorably is the goal. And lastly, expect the sister show Nutrition Radio to expand into once weekly 45 to 60 minute episodes with guest co-hosts covering the same nerdy nutrition news that's been broadcast for a few months now in daily 10-minute clips. We hope that an expanded presence will get you the news, education, banter, and guests that's made Iron Radio's community so loyal from the start. You are appreciated.
I will say, I don't know, it's a fuzzy topic just in terms of, because I do have a degree and I appreciate my degree. It gives me a means to think about training and like navigate information and all that stuff. But at the same time, as far as like in the marketplace, like in the actual it actually almost handicaps you because you do know and you try to do better kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Whereas, I mean, most people, if you really just, went to the grocery store and asked 100 people just various questions about strength and conditioning, like one of those, they always do it on late night where they ask people questions and they have like no idea or like, what I mean?
Yeah.
What most people know about fitness and nutrition is just marketing. Not any part of it is based on anything. I mean, keto is still hugely popular and the push on it has always been marketing, not necessarily value. So, I mean, you're kind of somewhat handicapped. Like, so trying to, in Lonnie's, phrasing was the preferred wrong answer. Mm-hmm. A lot of that for an exercise science person training people is marketing, giving people the preferred wrong answer.
Yeah. Well, and sadly, that's a lot of what, like how many people walk through your door and you already know the answer they want and it's wrong. Yeah. Like, can you make me world's strongest man in a year and a half? Nope, not happening. But they want to hear that. So, yeah. Like Lonnie talked about before the show, I don't even remember what brought it up, but just differences in the world. Just on another news bit, Jarrell brought it up to me that Kate Vibert, who would now be, or formerly Kate and I, went to the World Championship, and she went to weigh in. And in her words, I stripped down to the singlet at my weigh-in. The officials immediately expressed their disapproval, pointing repeatedly at my chest. They both spoke to each other in a language that I couldn't understand while pointing directly at my breast. I was embarrassed, humiliated, and angry. Claims that every offensive part of her body was covered, and yet she was denied wearing a singlet because her body was not built similarly to most weightlifters. Basically, they told her she couldn't wear a singlet. after the fact, USA Weightlifting came out and said it was appalling and things like that. But
it's just that her boobs are too big.
Yeah, her boobs are too big, and it's cultural differences, and we've seen this all over the place. Is it right or is it wrong? I don't know. I have several stances on this, and it's the same stances I have. Like, I think a big problem is when people go visit another country, they expect that country to bow to them. Like, Americans are really bad at this. You'll go visit somewhere, and it's like they want the country, their traditions and standards to meet theirs. But at the same time, man, if you don't like it, don't invite a world championship to your country. You know this is the standard apparel of the sport, and the lady happens to have big boobs. Deal with it. Yeah, and I don't know, like we talked about before the show, for a bit there, they were talking about almost allowing two-piece suits for ladies. And I mean, this may be sad, but I think it's a good idea. And because I think viewership would go up, which means funding would go up because of advertising dollars and things like that. Would the people be watching the sport? No. And we know that. You would have more people just objectifying the people on the stage. But is that furthering your sport in the long run? Could you take that stance? And it'd be like, yeah, you probably could.
If you were spinning it with like positive attention towards this or this physique or whatever.
Well, even if it's not positive attention, it's money flowing into your sport. Like, and let's be honest, USA Weightlifting doesn't have a ton of money flying into it. So, I'm sorry, this is all pointed towards women. Like, because nobody wants to, like, if all of a sudden dudes were wearing little bikini pants and lifting, they're not gaining viewers. But I'd hate to say it, but most people watch beach volleyball not to watch volleyball. But I think the viewership at the Olympics and everything else would go up. And so, yeah, I mean, anyways, what I'm getting at is there's hard lines there in what happened to her. I mean, yes, she was in another country, and they have different standards, but in my opinion, they shouldn't have, the women are going to be wearing singlets. If you don't like that, don't invite the world championship to your country. You can't tell these athletes to change what they wear. So, because she's a well-endowed, big-breasted woman. But, yeah. And I don't remember the other thing I was going to talk about, which we don't have a ton of time for. I was just going to talk about injuries again, which we talk about all the time. And Lonnie was talking before the show. Basically, I jacked up my back for the first time in my life. And I have no idea what I did. I went in and lifted last Friday. Got my usual deadlift and squat workout in. Everything went great. Didn't hit anything amazing. It was a quick workout. I hit like 600 deadlift, and I did 405 for 15 on deadlift. No incident happened during the training session. By the following night, for the first time in my life, I had spinal pain. And if you've ever had spinal pain, which now I have, way different than muscular pain. I've had muscle micro tears and stuff in my back where it's this is a different nerve type stabbing pain. And no clue what happened. And by Monday, it was fine. I went to bench, and there it was again. So I was talking to Brian Carroll, who's McGill back specialist and stuff like that. And because generally that's what I do. You refer out to people smarter than you in something. I admit that I don't know everything. And he's like, well, seeing as you're 45, have been competing for 20 plus years, and you've never had a back incident, he's like, just rest it. You'll be good. And already today I'm much better. But I don't know. Part of me wonders if, is it just wear and tear over years of competition? Because I know so many people that have had back issues. And is it just, I've picked up and put 700 pounds on my back so many times in 20 some years. Is there just wear and tear? And then how do you deal with injuries? A lot of people do you work around it? Do you just quit? Do you, my general thing is always with injuries, a workaround. Okay. Well, I can't do that. What can I do? Is always what I go to. I default to time of injury is not to get depressed and quit. It's to, okay, let's spin this in a positive and figure out what I can work on. Even if it's just like, I don't know, I'm going to do curls, whatever. You find a positive outlet during the injury times and attack that positive thing. So
I've found actually not like directly where it's like you injure yourself squatting and then you just go squat again, but like working that area like almost immediately, like starting to get blood flow to that area, and like even if it's a little mini range of motion, like the idea of movement being the medicine has, I think, actually helped out a lot with like really just training athletes how to, because what happens is people get injured and then they stay away from everything.
Mm-hmm.
And like that to me makes it, worse. So whatever we can do with like higher rep stuff and get a ton of blood flow in there. And I'm not talking about like we're actually training it. I'm just talking about we are doing a bunch of reps to like really pump some blood to the area.
Yeah.
Directly, particularly with like even the further away, like the wrists and ankles, like getting to motion quicker and like more often is, I mean, that's helped out a lot with a couple of our athletes who have, generally issues there. We've been able to eliminate some. But yeah, just, I mean, kind of the thought process behind an injury and what happens, I think we kind of almost have it wrong. Maybe not wrong is the right word, but almost backwards. Where it's like, oh no, immobilize everything. Stay away from it essentially, and then barely creak it back in. It's like you're almost asking for it to be injured again in some cases, as opposed to just, work around it, keep getting some blood flow to it, and, gently kind of building back up.
Yeah. I'm answering Dan John here. No, I agree. And that's one thing I figured out. Like on Wednesday was the first day I trained again. And basically it's like, I'm going to find what I can do. So I went out and I threw. I found out that I tried some regular training, could not do that. It was a 1 scale of pain, but I know, okay, if I add weight, it's going to hurt. So we messed around with things. I found out that throwing just the lightweight actually loosened my back up. So we did 100 of those. And by the end of that session, I actually felt better. And I think, like you said, I think a lot of people's fault is they get an injury and they 100% stay away from it. They stop training and it makes that spot even weaker. You get all this scar tissue that's just not mobile anymore, and you see joints and things lock up. And my default is always like, as long as the pain is like, I call it a 1, but I know that my pain threshold's fairly high, so my 1 is probably an average person's 4 or 5. It's like, I'm not going over a 1 in pain. I know that's dumb. I'm going to find things that don't hurt, or if I have to stay away from that area, like I said, I just find what I can concentrate on. But when I blew my biceps and stuff, it's like, okay, well, I'm training the other arm, and like I was in the next day. And it's like, I'm going to do things I can do. And part of that, I think a big part of that is just for my mental health. If you just sit and don't do shit and get all upset that you're injured, man, that wears on you. It's like, spin it. And I'm always big into spinning to the positive. Okay, I can't do that. What can I do? And I know, okay, I can't do this for 8 weeks. I have this cast on. I'm not going to even think about it. I'm just going to concentrate what I can do. And I'm going to make the rest of the organism better. So, but.
And, in doing so, you're probably doing a favor for that injured area too. Like Jarrell was saying, blood flow, range of motion. You know what? Painting with a super broad brush, and I'm not saying we don't need diagnostic imaging and all that, because like a torn muscle, you're not just going to work around, and get back to, I'll just do lighter curls on that side. How about no, right? But once the inflammation phase is gone, this is looking across decades, just something I've seen in science and in practice, is a move toward more aggressive, do something earlier on, right? Some type of rehab, some type of something. Long gone the days where, oh, honey, just don't move for 6 weeks. Don't, just take complete rest. From cardiac rehab to musculoskeletal rehab, so many things. Even pregnancy, so many things have become much more aggressive, so long as you're informed, and cautious, and pain is a guide, and, diagnostics and all that stuff. But 100%. Being more aggressive.
Be informed is 100%. I agree with. And what do I always do? It was like in this case, okay, my back hurts. Who do I reach out to? Brian Carroll's a back specialist. I'm going to reach out to him. And I'm not saying I'm against imaging and stuff. That's why I reached out to him. Do I need an image? Here's my symptoms. Here's what's going on.
Right.
And he's like, it's like, I want to find out if I even need one. And he's like, no. He's like, you're 46 years old. You have zero, like you've never had back pain in your life. You've been competing with heavy weights for 20 years. He's like, under my professional opinion, don't. What did he tell me to do? Rest it. He's like, with the pain level you're telling me about and the symptoms you're telling me about, I don't think you need to waste your time and money on that. For now. Mm-hmm. Now, if you rest it for a week and the symptoms haven't changed, time to go look at something. So, and that's what. But I tell people that all the time. And that's another big thing going back to the being a coach or being a trainer thing that I have issues with is a lot of, and you see this more in beginner people. They never want to refer out to somebody smarter than them. They want to have their clients think that they are the smartest. Like, I am the end-all, be-all answer. Like, I am quick to refer out. Like, it's like, I don't know the answer to that total. I could give you an answer, but this guy's much smarter. Reach out to them. And I think more trainers and coaches would do better if they did that. You'll get more respect from your clients if you have other people that are just smarter in that field you refer to. Like, can I deal with nutrition? Do I know a thing or two about it? Yes. But if somebody wants up to a point, like I've dealt with bodybuilders and they're like, well, will you do my training in nutrition? And I'm like, no, I'll do your training. I'd rather have this person do your nutrition because that's what they do. And they do.
And, Phil,
well,
that goes both ways. And this also relates to injury is I've seen dietitians go a little bit too far into the exercise part. It's like, whoa, you need to make a referral. Because a lot of times there is this sort of pussyfoot around the issue. Like, we'll just do physical activity, not exercise. But then they put them on a walking program. And it's like, what if they could have a musculoskeletal problem, or like we talked about in the past, no safe environment in their neighborhood, or bad sidewalks, or there's 100 different things. You need some screening and some programming. And so it shouldn't be a blow to anybody's ego to say, I can't have everything in my wheelhouse, right? The human body is so complex, like we said earlier.
Yes.
Make the referral.
Well, and it's like any field. Like, I'm a jack of all trades in certain aspects. Like, I can build things around my house, but I am not an expert. And the minute you try to be the jack of all trades, I can guarantee you're not the best at anything.
Yeah, master.
Because you're splitting time. So if you want to be the best strength and conditioning coach, it's probably a good idea to refer out for other aspects of that. So you can put 100% of your attention on that. So, yeah. Anyway. But I think we can call it a day. We covered a bunch of stuff. So, I know Darrell had to dip out a little early. We lost Lonnie for about 2 minutes. But, yeah. It was a good one. So
yeah, that's good stuff to talk about.
Yep. So, hi, guys.
All right, man.
Have a good week.
Yep, we'll see you.
Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet, or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.